Hello everybody, Fantastic Airy here. I got to house sit this weekend, so I had a little bit of a better lighting situation to film. I filled a sketchbook page with some mushrooms and an onion, a garlic, blueberries. I had a interesting week. I've been sick, but also working, so I'm a little bit low energy, but I still want to make sure I get these videos out every week. Today we're going to be painting some mossy skulls. This one here is a practice skull that I did that turned out alright, and I want to share with you my process in which I paint a skull in some moss. I start off by, of course, using reference and shaping in the skull itself. It was a lot of fun just going in straight with a paintbrush and not using a pencil sketch first. It was very interesting, and it's also good practice for the eye. You're pretty much practicing painting silhouettes, the silhouettes of shapes, when you just go in with the straight paintbrush. Once I have the main shape of the skull blocked in, I add in the darker areas of the skull, like the eye sockets, the nose, and then any part which looks like there's a little bit more depth to it. I went in with a very stylistic wet on wet and also dry brush technique, creating kind of a cool texture for the skull itself. Because if you notice, skulls have a lot of cool textures, dents, and even cracks in some places. For this, you kind of have to trust the process and just go with it. The further along I got into the process and trusting the process, I started to see and feel the skull out a little bit more. It started to look like what I was going for. And then not being afraid to add in even darker areas just to define the shape of the skull itself a little bit more, the features, the characteristics, so that it reads a little bit clearer. I just love using watercolor. It's such an unpredictable medium in some ways, which sometimes it'll dry a little bit different than you expect it to. It'll look a little bit different, but I find that's a part of the beauty of it. It's so fun. Adding in some smaller little details just to define the area of the skulls just a little bit more. I add in some warmer tones of brown to grays, using Payne's gray and then black and browns. I didn't want to use just gray and white for the skull. For the majority of this painting, I used my Princeton Aqua Elite paintbrush, my number 2 round. It did pretty much all I needed it to do. And then afterwards, I think I went in with the more finer paintbrush. And now that we have got the skull painted in, we are adding in our moss areas. If you actually study moss and what it looks like really close up, there's really unique features, and it's really cool different shapes and the way that it grows and sprouts, and I think it creates spores, but I'm not sure. So I used a lot of reference, different types of moss to kind of create the shapes of the moss for the skulls. After which I just ended up going with my own funny little shapes and not really following the reference too much, just because I wanted to create this composition, and I was really just looking for a little bit of a unique look to it and color for the skulls. The moss wasn't complicated to paint at all. It was actually just a lot of fun. Putting in some red and darker greens, more on the brown sides, adding in some yellow, sticking with a similar color palette. And then the sun would poke out every now and then. We haven't seen the blue sky here in a while, and it would create these little sunbeams on the page, which I thought were really nice and refreshing. And then I take my very tiny 0.5 paintbrush to dot in some tinier little defined details for the moss. And here is the final result. I ended up adding in a little bit of a reddish pink and yellow tone to the skull, kind of to give it that little bit of a glow. And of course, I darkened the features just a little bit more to define the eye sockets and the nose. The end result turned out to be pretty satisfying, and I like how this turned out. I never get tired of painting skeletons, skulls, and plants, and when I combine them together, it gives it a fantastical look, almost like time's passing by. Please comment down below if you enjoyed this video, and if you've tried to paint in this way where you just go in with your paintbrush without using an initial sketch first. I feel like it's great practice for studying silhouettes and the shapes of things. overall, this was really enjoyable to create, and I'm definitely going to fill this whole page with more skulls and moss, in which I'll show you in my video next week. Videos are uploaded every Friday, and you can find me in all my social media in the links below. I have an imprint shop if you'd be interested in purchasing this skull and moss as a print or sticker. Link in the description below. And that's about it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching. I hope everyone is well wherever you are in the world. And again, I'll see you guys next week. Bye bye.